You don't need another motivational video. You don't need another supplement, another hack, another shortcut. What you need is a line in the sand, a decision, not tomorrow, not next Monday, right now. At some point around 40, a man wakes up, looks in the mirror, and realizes he doesn't fully recognize the guy staring back at him anymore. It's not a dramatic moment, it's quiet, subtle, almost invisible to the outside world. But inside, something feels off. Maybe your energy is lower, maybe you've gained a little weight, maybe you wake up tired no matter how much you sleep. But it goes deeper than physical changes. You realize the fire you once had has faded. The ambition that fueled you in your 20s and your 30s, the drive that pushed you to build, conquer, achieve, that hunger is now replaced by a quiet, unsettling emptiness. You don't feel depressed exactly, but you definitely don't feel fully alive. It's like you're coasting, and every day feels a bit more numb than the last. I know exactly what this feels like because I lived it. By the time I hit 40, I'd achieved a lot on the outside. IFBB pro bodybuilder, successful businesses, nice home, everything looked perfect from the outside. But when the lights went off, when the noise stopped, there was a silent crisis growing inside me. At 36, I went through a brutal spinal surgery that almost left me paralyzed. That moment broke me physically, but I rebuilt. What I didn't see coming was the second, deeper collapse 5 years later. That crisis at 36 was physical, painful, visible. The crisis I faced after 40 was invisible, deeper, and honestly much harder to fight. Because when you lose your identity as a man, you don't lose it overnight. You lose it one small compromise at a time. You skip workouts, you let discipline slide. You accept average as normal. You trade the fire in your belly for comfort, convenience, and quiet resignation. And nobody warns you about this. Nobody tells you that becoming a father at 41, like I did, will challenge your identity like nothing before. Nobody prepares you for the responsibility, the shift, the pressure that quietly chips away at who you once were. Here's the truth that every man over 40 needs to hear. This crisis doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. But how you respond to it, how you face it head on, that's what makes you a man. My name is Julien Quaglierini, and today I'm going to share something deeper than muscles, diet, and discipline. I'm going to share how I lost myself completely after 40 and how I rebuilt my identity brick by brick into something stronger than ever. Not just as a bodybuilder, not just as a coach, but as a father, a husband, a leader, and above all, as a man fully alive again. If you're over 40, tired, lost, and quietly battling your own silent crisis of identity, stay with me. Because today, you're going to find out exactly how to rebuild yours. Most men over 40 never talk about what they are going through. We are told to man up, to deal with it silently, to never show weakness. But what happens when the crisis isn't obvious? When there's no visible wound, no obvious trauma, just a slow, steady erosion of who you used to be? Here's the uncomfortable truth. At 40, your body starts sending signals you can ignore anymore. Your testosterone drops, your sleep gets lighter, your energy falls off. The drive that used to propel you out of bed every morning turns into an effort just to get through the day. But the deeper issue isn't just physical, it's psychological, it's existential. Your whole life you were taught that success means achieving certain things. The job, the house, the family, the respect. And by 40, many of us have checked most of those boxes. But once you've checked the boxes, what's left? When the external goals fade away, the only thing left is you, your reflection in the mirror, your inner voice. And that's exactly when most men realize they don't recognize that reflection anymore. At 40, I was in exactly this place. On the outside, I had everything society defined as success: a thriving career, an IFBB pro bodybuilding status, a comfortable life, but inside, I felt empty. I didn't wake up excited anymore. I woke up numb. My workouts, once intense, became routine. My discipline, once non-negotiable, slipped into comfort. I started asking myself quietly, is this all there is? Is this who am I now? And worst of all, is this feeling permanent? But I didn't speak about it, not to friends, not to family, not even to my wife at first. Because as men, we are expected to be strong, unbreakable, consistent. We hold the weight of expectations quietly, believing that admitting uncertainty or weakness means we are somehow failed. So I ignored it. I suppressed it. I tried distracting myself with more work, more achievements, more validation. But nothing filled the void. Then, at 41, something happened that changed everything. I became a father. Holding my son Nolan for the first time was the most profound experience of my life. In that moment, I felt a love, a purpose, an intensity I had never experienced before. But alongside that joy came another wave of confusion, a deeper crisis about who I was becoming. Because now, I wasn't just Julien, the athlete, the competitor, the entrepreneur. I was Julien, the father. And suddenly, every decision, every habit, every choice carried much greater weight. I started wondering, what kind of father am I going to be? What kind of example will I set for him? Will he see a man fully alive, strong, vibrant, or will he see a man coasting through life? I realized that how I was feeling wasn't unique, it wasn't rare. Almost every man I spoke to privately, every man who opened up, admitted to feeling something similar. Quietly lost, silently struggling, secretly questioning their identity, their purpose, their drive. And that's when I understood something crucial. This masculine identity crisis after 40 isn't an anomaly. It's almost universal. But because it's quiet, because it's subtle, because it's invisible, most men never address it directly. Instead, we numb it with distractions. We avoid it with routines. We escape it with substances, entertainment, or superficial achievements. But ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. Ignoring it only makes the void bigger, deeper, darker. And I knew deep down, if I didn't face the crisis directly, if I didn't actively rebuild myself from the inside out, it would swallow me whole. It would turn me into a shadow of the man I knew I could be, the man I wanted to be for my son, for my family, and myself. And so, at that crossroads, I made the decision to stop running, stop hiding, and stop lying to myself. I decided to confront the silent crisis head-on, not just for me, but for Nolan, for my wife Marjorie, for every man out there silently battling the same invisible struggle. If you're feeling this now at 40, 45, 50 or beyond, you're not broken, you're not weak, you're human. But the next step you take, the next decision you make will define the rest of your life. This is your silent crisis. And now it's time to break that silence. Losing yourself doesn't happen overnight. It's not dramatic. It's not a single defining moment where everything suddenly collapses. It's slow, invisible, insidious. You don't even realize it's happening until one day you wake up feeling disconnected from the man you once were. At 40, you look in the mirror and the reflection staring back feels unfamiliar. You see a body that's softer, less defined. You see eyes that look tired, lacking the spark you used to have. And worst of all, you feel a hollowness inside that you can't explain. The irony is, by 40, you've probably achieved most of the goals you set out to accomplish earlier in life. Career success, financial stability, maybe a loving family, children. But despite having achieved these things, you still feel strangely incomplete. For me, the moment I truly realized I was losing myself came quietly. There was no big crash, no obvious disaster. It happened slowly, day by day, decision by decision. I stopped prioritizing my workouts, not drastically, just subtly. Instead of pushing myself, I started maintaining. Instead of chasing improvement, I settled for good enough. My meals went from intentional to convenient. My mornings, once dedicated to discipline and structure, became chaotic and reactive. But it wasn't just physical changes, it was deeper, more subtle. Mentally, I lost my edge. The hunger to grow, to build, to strive faded quietly into the background. I was still productive, I still worked hard, but inside I felt disconnected, like I was performing a role rather than truly living. And here's what made me worse. No one noticed. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. My family, my friends, my followers, they all saw the same Julien. They saw the physique, the success, the lifestyle. But inside, I knew something was off. I started questioning myself. Is this what getting older feels like? Is this what success ultimately leads to? Comfort, complacency, numbness? And the worst part was this subtle feeling of guilt. Guilt because I had everything society said would make me happy, yet I wasn't fulfilled. And guilt because as a man, especially a man who's supposed to inspire others, admitting weakness or confusion felt impossible. Then came the day my son was born. Becoming a father at 41 was a miracle. We were told repeatedly it wouldn't happen. Failed IVF attempts, surgeries for my wife, hopelessness, and then Nolan arrived naturally, unexpectedly, beautifully. Holding him for the first time was transformative, but it also amplified my internal crisis. Suddenly, it wasn't just about me anymore. I had a son who would watch me every move, who would model his future self after the man I choose to be. That realization scared me profoundly, because in that moment, I saw clearly how much I had let myself drift, how far I had slipped from the disciplined, driven, unstoppable man I knew I could be. I remember one specific night vividly. Nolan was just a few months old. I was standing quietly in the dark, watching him sleep. The room was silent, peaceful, but inside my mind raced. I asked myself a hard question. If Nolan grows up watching this version of me, the comfortable, complacent version, what kind of man will he become? Will he settle too? Will he think numbness and comfort are normal? In that moment, I knew I had to do something drastically different. I understood deeply that losing isn't just about you. It affects everyone you love. The truth was, the longer I stayed numb, the harder it will be to reclaim my identity. I realized that the man my family needed, the man Nolan deserved, wasn't the man I was becoming. So that night, in the quiet darkness of my son's room, I made a commitment to myself. I will no longer accept mediocrity, comfort, or numbness. I will no longer coast through life. Starting now, I rebuild myself, fully, intentionally, relentlessly. And it wasn't about ego, vanity, or stature anymore. It was about legacy, about becoming the kind of man I'd want my son to emulate. But making that decision was just the first step, because reclaiming yourself after losing yourself is never easy. It's brutally honest, it's uncomfortable. It means confronting every habit, every pattern, every excuse you ever accepted as normal. It means accepting that comfort and convenience are often your biggest enemies. And that's exactly what I had to do next. I had to face myself raw, unfiltered, completely honest, and begin the real work of rebuilding my identity. Not the identity society gave me, not the identity others expected from me, but the identity I choose intentionally. Because here's the uncomfortable truth I discovered. If you don't consciously choose your identity, society, comfort will choose it for you. And trust me, the identity they choose for you isn't the man you want to become. If you're losing yourself right now, If any part of you resonates with what I'm sharing, understand this clearly. It's not too late. You haven't lost yourself forever, but you must acknowledge it, accept it, and make a decision to rebuild. Because once you lose yourself completely, once numbness and comfort become your identity, that's when the real danger sets in. So right now, ask yourself honestly, have you quietly drifted from the man you used to be? Have you let comfort and convenience define you? If the answer is yes, your next choice matters more than you know. It's time to rebuild. Real change doesn't usually happen in a dramatic Hollywood-style moment. Real change, the kind that transforms your identity, the kind that shifts your entire trajectory as a man, is often quiet, private, deeply personal. My turning point wasn't a loud moment of triumph. It wasn't winning a bodybuilding competition or hitting a financial milestone. It was subtle, silent, and honestly painful. It was one of those quiet nights when everything inside feels heavy, when your thoughts keeps you awake long after everyone else is asleep. I was standing in front of the bathroom mirror late at night. Nolan was asleep, my wife was asleep, the house was silent. It was just me and my reflection. And for the first time in a long time, I truly allowed myself to really look at the man staring back. I saw the lines on my face, the signs of aging, the fatigue in my eyes. I saw the physical proof of decades of discipline, but also the subtle hints of compromise. In that quiet reflection, something shifted inside me. I asked myself a question I hadn't faced head-on before. What kind of man am I becoming? Not who have I been, not who was I, but who am I becoming now, at 41, as a father, as a husband, as a man? The answer I got back honestly shook me, because the man I was becoming wasn't aligned with the man I knew I could be. Yes, I was successful. Yes, I was respected. Yes, from the outside, everything seemed perfect. But inside, I was sleeping. I wasn't becoming stronger. I was slowly settling. I wasn't becoming sharper. I was gradually accepting comfort as my new normal. And in that silent, honest moment, I realized something fundamental. I had to stop chasing external validation. I had to stop worrying about maintaining appearances, about keeping the perfect image. Because the man in the mirror, the real man, he knew the truth. He knew I was capable of more. He knew I was drifting from my purpose, from my true mission as a man. But here's the thing about truth. Once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. From that moment, every excuse, every shortcut, every act of comfort felt intolerable. But this realization alone wasn't the full turning point. The real shift came a few nights later, as I sat quietly beside my son's crib again, listening to him breathe softly as he slept. I looked at him, this tiny human completely dependent on me, for guidance, strength, direction, and suddenly everything felt crystal clear. The man I choose to be today, tomorrow, every single day would shape the man he would become. My compromises would become his standards. My discipline, or lack of it, would become his normal. My acceptance of comfort and mediocrity will teach him to settle too. And in that profound, quiet realization, something powerful woke up inside me again. I was like reconnecting with a deep internal fire I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the youthful ambition of my 20s. It wasn't the relentless drive for stature or success of my 30s. It was something deeper, calmer, more mature. It was a profound sense of responsibility, not just to my son or my wife, but to myself. I decided right then that I wouldn't just rebuild my body. I would rebuild my entire identity from the ground up, not as a reaction to external pressures, not to impress anyone on social media, but to honor the man I was always supposed to be. I committed myself to becoming more disciplined, more intentional, more present in every area of my life, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I realized clearly that true strength isn't about muscle or trophies or statues. It's about choosing consciously every single day who you will be, what you stand for, and how you show up for the people counting on you. And that choice must be made repeatedly, quietly, privately, when no one else is watching. That's the essence of real masculinity after 40. Not what others see, but who you are in the silence. From that night onward, my mornings changed drastically. I woke up earlier, not because of obligation, but because it felt right. My workouts intensified, not to build more muscle, but to reinforce discipline, purpose, and integrity. My nutrition tightened, not for aesthetics, but to respect the body I had been given and the legacy I wanted to leave. My relationships deepened, not superficially, but authentically, intentionally. I stopped letting trivial things distract me. I refocused completely on building a life aligned with who I truly wanted to become, fully, intentionally, relentlessly, because I understood something critical. If I compromised on my identity, if I choose comfort over purpose, I wouldn't just lose myself. I would lose the opportunity to teach my son what it means to be a strong man in an increasingly confused world. I would lose the chance to show him how to lead himself, how to hold his standards, how to walk through life with purpose and clarity. That quiet, subtle turning point changed everything. Not instantly, not overnight, but step by step, day by day, decision by decision. It reshaped the entire trajectory of my life. And the beauty of a real turning point like this, it's available to you right now, at any moment. It doesn't require a disaster. It doesn't require hitting rock bottom. It requires one thing: the willingness to face yourself honestly, to accept the discomfort of change, and to consciously choose the kind of man you want to become. This was my real turning point. The quiet, deeply personal moment where I finally understood the kind of man I needed to become for myself, for my son, my family, and my legacy. And now it's your turn. Rebuilding your identity as a man after 40 isn't about motivation. It's about alignment. It's not about going harder. It's about going deeper. After that quiet moment of truth, sitting beside my son's crib, I knew I couldn't go back to who I was before. But I also couldn't become someone new by force or intensity alone. I had to rebuild my identity from the ground up. Not based on who I used to be, but based on who I choose to become now, at 43, as a father, as a man. And I want to walk you through the exact mindset and structure that helped me rebuild, because it wasn't random, it was intentional. I rebuilt my identity through small daily wins. Your habits are vote for the man you're becoming. I started small, no huge resolution, no overnight transformation, just simple, powerful rituals. Waking up early even when I didn't feel like it, training when I was tired, not to punish myself, but to reconnect with discipline. Preparing my meals with intention, not to look good, but to live with self-respect. Every one of these actions, no matter how small, was a statement. I'm not costing anymore. When you're over 40, your energy is precious. You can't waste it chasing chaos or faking intensity. So I built a structure that gave my day clarity and control. Mornings became sacred. I started the day with breath work, sunlight, hydration, silence, not scrolling. Movement became non-negotiable. Even if it was just 20 minutes of focused training, I did it, because a man in motion is a man in control. These small wins began to rebuild the foundation I had neglected. I removed everything that made me numb. This was harder, because the enemy of identity at 40 is not pain, it's numbness. And the numbness comes from distraction, from dopamine overload, from mental clutter. So I started cutting social media scrolling, news cycle, endless YouTube videos, junk food that made me sluggish, conversations and people that drained my energy. I replaced all that noise with solitude, journaling, books, and the brutal honesty of asking, is this action helping me become the man I want to be or making me forget him? That question became my filter for everything. I reclaimed my physical power. It wasn't about aesthetics anymore. After years of competing, chasing the stage, picking and cutting, I realized something. A strong body means nothing if you feel weak inside. So I stopped training for others and I started training for me. To feel alive, to carry my son without pain, to look in the mirror and feel proud, not of how I looked, but of what I had endured and overcome. I simplified my training, more intentional, more restorative, more functional, and I began teaching my body to trust me again after injury, after fatigue, after years of pushing too hard. It wasn't about going back, it was about going forward, smarter and more in tune with who I was becoming. I reforged my masculinity around presence. In my 20s, I thought masculinity was about domination. In my 30s, I thought it was about discipline and success. After 40, holding my son, looking at my wife, waking up every day in this body that had been broken and rebuilt, I realized masculinity is about one thing: presence. It's about being where your feet are. It's about being fully in the moment with your child, fully honest in a conversation with your partner, fully focused when you're training, reading, leading. Presence is what makes a man uncheckable. Because in a world of distraction, of noise, of easy escape routes, a man who is fully present is rare, and rare is powerful. I redefined success. This was the final pillar. Because rebuilding your identity means letting go of outdated definitions. I no longer cared about followers, trophies, or money for validation. I cared about living with integrity, inspiring my son without saying a word, leading men out of the same silent crisis I had lived through. Success became internal, quiet, real, and when that shifted, everything else did too. Rebuilding my identity wasn't a comeback, it was a rebirth. It was the version of me that had nothing to prove, but everything to live for. And once I stepped into this new identity, I stopped chasing motivation. I started living with intention. No more highs and crashes, just quiet consistency. No more questions about who I was, just evidence every single day of the man I was choosing to become. And the best part, you can choose to. Today, right now. When you rebuild your identity after 40, you don't go back to who you were. You become someone new, someone forged in experience, pain, and intention. Not fire, not hype, but clarity. I didn't become the old me again. I became a version of myself I didn't even know existed, because I had never needed him until now. And let me be clear, I'm not the biggest I've ever been. I'm not the strongest. I'm not the most shredded, but I'm the most ensured I've never felt in my entire life. Because now I don't train to impress. I train to lead, to stay ready, to be the man my wife can count on, to be the man my son can look at and say, that's what a man looks like. I'm not driven by numbers anymore. Not likes, not metrics, not money. I'm driven by legacy, because I finally understood legacy isn't about what you leave behind when you die. It's about what you build while you're still alive, and it's about the habits your son absorbs without you saying a word. It's about the way you walk into a room, the way you handle stress, the way you carry the weight without complaining, without collapsing. It's about who you are when no one's watching. Today, I live differently. I don't chase energy, I generate it. I don't need motivation, I've got a mission. I don't rely on hype, I build momentum through discipline, through structure, through presence. I'm no longer looking for the next high. I'm grounded in something stronger than dopamine. And I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm proud of the man I've become. Not because he's perfect, but because he's conscious, he's aware, he's intentional, he's awake. That's what rebellion gave me. Not a new body, a new conscience, a new standard, a new peace. And I see it now in everything, in how I show up in my marriage, and how I speak to my team, in how I train even no one's filming, in how I talk to my son, in how I carry pain without using it as an excuse. I rebuild a man I respect, and that changes everything. Because when you truly respect yourself, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You walk into the world differently, quieter, more focused, more present. So who did I become? I became a man who doesn't run from discomfort, who doesn't hide behind success, who doesn't numb himself with dopamine or distraction. I became the kind of man I would have looked up to when I was 20, and the kind of man I want my son to become at 40. And if you're still watching, if any part of my story reflects something inside you, then I want you to hear this and hear it clearly. You can become that man too, not by going faster, not by adding more, but by stripping away the noise and getting brutally honest about who you are and who you want to become next. You're not too late, you're not too broken, you're not too old, but you are at a crossroads. And only you can choose what happened next. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you is waking up. And I want you to pause and honor that, because most men click away. Most men distract themselves. Most men ignore the quiet voice inside that's screaming. I'm not done, but you didn't. You stayed. You listened. And that means you're ready to decide, because here's the final truth. You don't need another motivational video. You don't need another supplement, another hack, another shortcut. What you need is a line in the sand, a decision. Not tomorrow, not next Monday, right now. The man you've been costing as, you already know where that leads. More fatigue, more numbness, more distraction, a slow, quiet decline, while pretending everything's fine. But there's another path, a hard one, a path with structure, discipline, pain, clarity, and freedom. Not the freedom that comes from money or travel, but the kind that comes from looking in the mirror and saying, I trust the man I see. That's real success. That's masculinity reborn. And that's what I want for you. If you're ready to take that step, not just dream about it, not just plan it, but start rebuilding your identity with structure and intention, then I created something for you. It's not about selling you another plan. It's about handing you a blueprint, the exact 5 rituals that rebuild my life after 40 and that can rebuild yours physically, mentally, hormonally, spiritually. I wrote it for men like you, men over 40 who are done drifting, men who are ready to rebuild something that lasts. You can grab it for free. It's linked in the description. You're not too late. You're right on time. And I promise you, the man you want to become is still inside you. But you've got to show up today. So let's rebuild together.